All right, welcome to the Saturday Side Dress for episode 2. We are here with our friend Dan Kittredge of the Bionutrient Food Association. Today we're going to be expanding the conversation into expanding our belief systems. So it should be a fun conversation today. We're going to be going all kinds of places, but I'll hand it over to Scott to start the conversation here.
I apologize. We landed at 4 a.m. this morning. All three of us have been traveling, and
Yep.
I'm just making sure my YouTube works before I get too carried away. So
We all literally all just sat down like 2 minutes ago, so,
we do
so bear
act-
with us.
we do actually do this. We do actually travel, and we do actually meet farmers on a regular basis. It looks like I got a thumbs up, so we're going to go as if we are broadcasting live to YouTube. The main point of this show is, we're talking about expanding our beliefs as farmers. So Sarah and I are professional agricultural consultants. We have worked with everything from golf courses to famous botanical gardens, construction projects, some of the largest actual farms on the planet. And we've seen an extremely wide array of, I guess you could say, modalities or techniques that farmers could employ into the agricultural process. And what's interesting to us is we're providing data and analytics to that experience. And so we're measuring very clearly the effects on soil biology, the effects on yield, the effects on productivity, the effects on quality, whether that's subjective, whether that's objective with Dan's Bionutrient Food meter, or in our regulated cannabis work with compliance testing. And so we see very measurable changes in all of those things with the basic foundational principles that farmers incorporate into their agricultural process. And what's interesting from our viewpoint is, I've seen a Buddhist monk bless a property and measured the increase. And from my viewpoint as a Southern California, not Buddhist monk, I guess you could say. I don't even know what you'd call me, but to me that was wild. Like, I'd never seen someone just bless a farm, you know what I mean? And there was some things on that property that maybe were a little bit out of spec with data, but somehow at the end of the year, I felt pretty clearly that Buddhist monk blessing that property did something reality. And so what we try to advocate in our clients' farm is start with those basic foundational tangible practices. And so incorporating soil chemistry and management, incorporating biological assessment and management, and then moving into fertilization. You should really, in my opinion, start there. But there's all kinds of rabbit holes about paramagnetism. I got airplane brain. There's just so many things. And so I guess my goal with this episode is just to pique your interest into looking into what else may be out there. And also what I've noticed is farmers will tend to find one technique, one modality, one measure of assessment, find some success with that improvement, and then tend to stay there. So if nothing else, we'd like to encourage you into, if you're already getting into soil chemistry, expand into biology. If you're doing biology, expand into soil chemistry, and really kind of go from there. So, and like we said on our last episode, when we first met Dan at a workshop, he blew my mind with the things that I didn't know about what I didn't know about what I didn't know. And it started me on a journey of Carrie Reams and Dr. William Albrecht and Arden Anderson and all these people that I'd never even heard of, and just not even getting way out into the woo-woo, but just getting into foundational functional science was extremely productive for our work career. And so, Dan, you've literally toured the world at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I can only imagine the things that you've seen. Is there anything that is on your mind about these types of things that I'm talking about here today?
Um,
Oops.
there's a lot of people on this planet who have a foundationally different set of assumptions about the way the world works than those of us in the West. And if you do travel the world, you get to. I mean, hopefully, get out of the resorts and things. If you actually see the world and meet the people in the world, it is very interesting to see how many different perspectives there are. And I think just getting exposed to that is foundational in knowing that there's other worlds out there. So how do you facilitate that exposure? Um, yeah, I don't know. Good question. But no, I think it's definitely an issue. I feel like is a real issue in the U.S. I think we really just sort of don't even think about the rest of the world. It's like they're sort of out there somewhere, but not really. Like we are the world, and and I think we have that. Like I think there's a little bit less of the of the broad-mindedness sometimes. But I mean, also foundationally, it has to do with the nature of the person. I think some people are more awake, and some people are less awake, and I regularly counsel my friends not to try to explain things to people who aren't curious or don't seem to be interested, because um, you're basically wasting your breath.
Yes.
And if there's resonance, if there's receptivity, if there's openness, I say follow that. If there's resistance or a lack of response, follow that. It's maybe the real question is about how to engage people. Is it as an evangelist, like I've got the answer, you should know these things, or I'm just present and we'll show up with what resonates. And if you can speak multiple languages, if you can understand how things work, you can explain it different ways. Sometimes that helps. Um, I think it helps to be able to speak in metaphor or in story or in science. Different people are sort of have like a kind of different tunings, and so if you know how to speak in their language, I find that helps. I was just speaking at a conference earlier today in Vermont. As you said, we all just sort of just got in here, and yeah, it was fun. It was fun doing that. Speaking in different languages for different people. I could definitely there was the nurse and the Native American elder, and being able to speak to both of them in a way that like they heard what I said. You know.
Which is hard about our job. We have a pretty widely casted net at this point. We have clients internationally, and my favorite strategy is to talk in metaphors. And one time I was in Macedonia working with a partnership between some Greece people and some Macedonian people, and I spoke in a metaphor, and I'm pretty certain that was the most I've ever offended anybody in my entire life. And so I still, to this
Well,
day,
maybe it got lost in translation. Sometimes there's aphorisms that we don't translate. But yeah.
definitely well, where I said this like 3 sentence metaphor, and the one guy said about 6 words. I think he basically said, I don't think he thinks you know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? And then the guys
It
looked.
could have been that too.
I said, that's not what I said. So I definitely have found that offending people is not a good way to get them on the journey with you to experience. So, for me as a soil food webby, once we found really seeing what the success could look like with the soul food web, the first step is evangelism, I think. And that seems to be, in a lot of ways, the least effective strategy for trying to get people to try something new. And so, for that first year or two, I wanted to tell anybody and everybody in the world about this thing, the soul food web. And it's like that didn't have that much traction, actually. I think one
Yeah.
thing might be all agree on is that most farmers are show me, you know. And so this weekend we were on a farm with 4 very high level thinking and executing individuals, and in a way it was kind of hard to show them something because you'd start talking about it and they'd walk away and go do it and try to figure it out themselves. And so as a consultant working with many different people, you have to be fairly fluid and identify as quickly as possible how this group wants to learn, and then kind of work with that, which is the art of consulting, I guess you could say. And so I haven't found a lot of, I guess there's been some value, but as you look at the cost benefit analysis of just purely evangelizing to people about different modalities tends to not be very successful in a lot of ways. And so people
I
want.
I mean I think that there's lots of lots of political parties and
Mhm,
and crusades and things that might argue otherwise. I think
fair enough.
there certainly there is it works. Evangelizing works. The question is whether it's the thing we should be doing. Um, or it's the best thing to do. Um, because really you're not trying to convince someone else of something. You're trying to stimulate their understanding and awareness, and facilitate their empowerment. Right. I mean, that's what you're trying to do as a consultant. That's certainly what I'm trying to do when I'm speaking. Um, yeah. I mean, for me, as we're having this conversation, what's coming to my mind is, again, what I was sort of how I was telling the story this morning was about it's a living system. Like, birth is germination. If you understand you need colostrum at birth, understand you need inoculation at germination. Early childhood development is a seedling stage. You understand the critical importance of early childhood development in humans. You understand, and maybe you understand it in chickens, or maybe you understand it in cows. And you understand it in seedlings. Being transplanted out is kindergarten. First flower and fruit is puberty. Like, if you've got a 14-year-old girl that's not getting fed well and is pregnant, something bad's going to happen. You're like, yeah,
Right.
like, well, that's what your tomato plants look like when it's rainy out and you got low conductivity and they're small and willowy and they got fruit set. Like, something bad is going to happen to that plant because understand where she's at in her life cycle. And
Mhm.
so that part of the storytelling of just like understanding that it's a living being going through its life, and you can sort of begin to intuit. Um, for me, that awareness that this is a sentient being here that is going through its life, like, um, if once you get to that point, which you can't sort of ignore that, then your receptivity and desire to learn and desire to like do a better job, I think is I don't know, stimulated. So it's about connecting in that personal way, as opposed to having it be a theoretical. You can argue in theory about microbes and compost teas and KNF, and that's all like very theoretical. But like, how do we get visceral and experiment? Yeah, I don't know. It's a it's an interesting question.
One thing, I'll be honest, I don't understand is how people get so campy, and it's like, in my, I started out in athletics and sports, and through my era, we were encouraged to go to a pitching coach, go to a hitting coach, go to a fielding coach, and so we were encouraged to develop as many skills as possible to be as well-rounded as possible, and so people most often know me from the soil food web world because that's what we talk about the most. But we have explored darn near every agricultural modality you can define simply because we've worked with such a wide group of people. And so when we come to a farm and work with a different farmer, oftentimes they have different aspects to their cultivation that's super important. We've worked with farmers that are dead set that any sort of pruning needs to be done with the biodynamic calendar, and they feel pretty set that when they prune and why they prune will then create a different effect on the plant, which a lot of times describing that to other people is fairly difficult, and how that system all works together. Um, and what I tend to see is people get pretty campy and then want to uh, I mean, sometimes war against the other camp, I guess you could say, and it gets
Well,
really.
that's the sort of the tribal nature and the us versus them and the fear and the lack and the
Mhm,
competition thing,
mhm,
um, which is what our nervous systems are, constantly in this fight or flight because of all the dynamics that are going on in the world around us. I think, to some degree, we're trained to behave in that way. I think people talk about human nature being a bad thing. I'm like, well, if you train children to be, competitive and aggressive and manipulative, they will become competitive and aggressive and manipulative. If you train them to be honorable and loving and truthful, they'll become honorable and loving and truthful. And so,
mhm.
to some degree, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. But
Yeah.
how about just the old try it in a corner?
Right.
Like, I don't say, I always tell people, I try to inspire them when I'm speaking, but then always say at least a couple times, don't take my word for anything.
Right.
Right.
Like, don't take my word for anything. If this sounds intriguing, try it in a corner. Don't tell anybody. Look,
Mhm,
look and see for yourself. Like, there's oftentimes, I mean, in many cases, it's like, oh, I have to change everything. I have to do something totally different. If you're threatening the way things are being done, they can't sort of process it. They don't have the what do you call it, the
Bandwidth.
mitochondrial metabolic energy to process, like systemically comprehending what it would take to change things, and so the immediate response is to push back. But if you frame it as a experiment.
Receptivity needs to be there too. So sometimes, oftentimes, especially with humans, the receptivity comes after a painful event, you know.
Yeah.
So that kind of can prepare, and unfortunately or fortunately, that can prepare the way for a new shift to take place. We often see it as a bad thing, but I think we embrace that. And I think in these times, that's imperative to embrace, embrace the suck, as they say, and some of the stuff. Um,
Somebody was just saying that this morning. I never heard that before. Embrace the
Yeah.
suck. I'm like,
well, it has something to
suck
teach
it up. That's what that means.
something to teach us for sure. And I think if we're listening, and that's the key, is what is our intent in this day and age? We are humans that are here on this planet for a reason. We are needed. We are important. Every single one of us is unique and has something to give. And in that constant forward movement toward perfection, which I believe that we are all here for, to participate in that forward progression, because love equals life and is always moving toward greater and greater perfection. And if we participate in that, right, and we participate in our intention and go, okay, well, what is this teaching me? What is this moment teaching me? What is my intention about this moment? And I mean, we all have those moments. I mean, I just had a plethora of moments all this entire year where you're like, can I get a break of moments? You know what I mean? Like where I'm not learning these deep lessons, and
Where you're not feeling the suck.
suck, like it
I've
is
had enough. I've had enough suck right now. Can I have some just not suck for a minute?
what is it? Like, well, it's always an opportunity for greater love, always a greater, and that sounds like maybe it's not a farmer thing to say, but I would say you are part of the garden. You, like as you pointed out last time, you are a caretaker. Your thoughts carry frequency that have a quality to them that affect the space around you. What is your intention when you step on that field? What is your intention in your interaction with this plant, with this earth, with these microbes? What is your intention? At all times. I mean, are they gardening us? Are we gardening them? Who knows? We're all growing together in one amazing, living, breathing, in and out, exhale, inhale, organism. And everything is a mirror, So, that's what I would say. If you can keep it just even simple to that as we all move forward collectively, that's what's on my mind, is like embracing each other, embracing the beauty that's in each other. Because I mean, we can mirror back what's not beautiful, but we can also mirror back what is beautiful about each other, and we can say, okay, we're all on this arc together. How are we going to learn together? We've got the science part of it, but all of this is really just a study of nature itself, which is us. It's all a mirror of us, and what is it that we want? I mean, everything else becomes meaningless without life itself. And so if life isn't thriving, well, then we aren't thriving. Nothing else
That's
is.
when we're experiencing the suck, and that's what life
Yeah,
is teaching us: is to
suck.
start doing more thriving.
Yeah,
I think it's kind of exciting, actually. As the way I see it, if there is a duality, like I would say, the unity is love,
yeah,
but if there is a duality, then that's fear and love, and that's experienced as pleasure and pain. And
yes,
so when you're suffering, you're away from life, you're away from love, you're in pain, and so there's something going on that you know you could do differently that would facilitate less suffering. And I mean, that's how I see what's going down broadly these days, is like the level of struggle is getting pretty pretty epic. And um we're being obliged to shift our way of being. And like, if we don't shift, I mean, I've been saying this recently. I'm not sure I said this last time, but it's like, if the more we're in harmony with life, the more we flourish. The more we're out of harmony with life, the more we die. And at some point we die. Like, it's really not like a theoretical thing. We're alive, and this is happening, and this struggle and pain. Either you go in that direction or you go in this direction, and you can start, and you have autonomy there, but the struggle in many cases is we're so worn down. I mean, just the metabolic, like biochemical, just the real energy in our being is low because of all the ambient stress.
Yeah.
It's really hard, I think, for a lot of people. It's really, really hard. Um, but those of us who are, think we're have something to offer can share and reach out to those that we come across. And I mean, I part of why I feel like all this work with the BFA is so important is because rebuilding the vitality of the soil, and then that in the food, and then that the economic viability of the land stewards, and then the vigor and the vitality in the humans, and obviating the need for all these toxins, and then all the economic effects of that. I mean, I think we can really begin to systemically turn things around.
I agree.
But it's it's getting it's getting proper rough.
Yeah. I like that. Rough.
Uh,
The
Yeah.
microphone, but dude, it's getting proper rough. Sarah and I got into Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, and in he does science-based development, I guess you could say, and he mentions that once you get into that fight or flight state, your brain turns off certain functions.
Exactly. Certain things don't work anymore. You just go
Mhm.
straight to the amygdala, and
Mhm.
it's survival. And you gotta get somebody into that place where they feel safe before they can even begin to have a serious conversation.
Because when you're in that fight or flight, your brain, I guess, doesn't allow you to choose the option, try something new. I
Right.
guess, for lack of, I mean, that's the way I understand.
Yep.
Excuse me. What we see with our consulting clients is, in order to move them into some better direction, you have to first get them into some place of feeling safe, which for us is the data. That's the easiest way for us to do it, is put it to a data point and move it off the emotion. And so
Yep.
until we get some data points set, it's all pretty scary, and I don't know what the word would be, but once we put it onto a data point and either one, show how bad it is, or show how good it is, I guess, or at least show what direction we need to go and what path that is. Oftentimes, that's enough to bring the farmer out of that panic, fight or flight, fear-based mindset that disallows trying something new, expanding your belief system, and moving into greater health. When we move it off the emotion and move it onto the data point, often that is a pretty good strategy. So that's worked for us very well.
Nice.
You start getting into some of the other areas of agriculture, maybe their place of comfort would be more of an energetic aspect. So we're not even talking about a physical, scientific lab type data point, but you can still get them towards a place where they can move out of that fight or flight, that then opens up the mind to be able to try something new or do. What is it? Basically, it's like you just keep doing what you've always done, I
Well,
guess.
it creates a groove in the record, and that becomes
Yeah.
the pattern in which you just default to that groove, right? And it's a very convincing groove, and part of that
We do create our own realities.
very convincing groove. But part of that, like we always say, spray to heal, not to kill, just to
Mhm.
put something around it to move the mind, shift the mindset, because the mindset often is kill, kills, and proactively kill, you know what I mean? And so we're trying to shift that very profoundly, where it's like, well, no, we have within every organism the ability to heal, to be healthy and whole. That's within our DNA, to be whole.
Yeah.
And your plant is no different. And so if we give it what it needs and we remove the toxicity or the resistance in the system, it will naturally express that wholeness, that health.
Mhm.
And that's a very difficult concept for people to really grasp, is that, one, I think we've moved so far away from the what I think is an innate knowing that we should be healthy. The system should be healthy, and that something is very wrong when it's not healthy. But we've been conditioned in these last this last century, really, that that we need something outside this. We need a pill, we need a drug, we need a pesticide, and all those things that, you really should be killing something. You should be watching for that to happen. And it's just a different mindset when you get in alignment with life and you go, okay, she is intelligent. What do I need to do to position her to express that highest intelligence? And what are the things she needs? Like you talk about the biology, the nutrition, the minerals, all that stuff, the terrain. If you just provide that platform, man, almost miracles happen. And we see farmers shift like that when they see it happen in an instant. And like everything opens up for them. And suddenly life is radically different. Like they were just reminded about the truth of life, that it is whole, that it can happen, and it's very profound to witness. But yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah, and that's the powerful. If you can convey that and inspire people to do something differently or experiment in the corner or whatever, and get that aha, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, is helping people, shift their grooves, start making a new groove.
Yeah. Groove,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. But Dispenza's cool. He's usually working with humans, but right now he's expanding out into the microbiome. And what's fascinating to kind of interweave the conversation with farming and humans and the microbiome is that he's doing a lot of studies with some pretty astute universities right now, like University of San Diego and some others, where they're doing really concrete, well, I mean, as concrete as you can get with kind of ethereal type data points, but they're really doing a very good job of capturing data as it pertains to shifting mindsets of humans in their thought process and capturing the outcome of that in the microbiome itself.
Oh, wow.
And also in other outcomes. So with what he has at his fingertips, because he does these advanced week-long retreats, so he's got a huge cohort of subjects. We were part of that. 1,700 people when we went. Now he's like up to 28 and 6,000 and somewhat. A lot of people at one time, all eating the same thing, doing the same thing during the day, right? Everything is about the same as you're going to get with humans. And then he'll basically pick the control and the non-control groups and study this phenomenon. And he sees that the microbiome shifts. It shifts. Just with the mind and the thoughts. We don't think of things like, we don't think of thoughts as food, but everything is a frequency, as you know in your device.
Yeah.
Everything is a frequency, and you're literally using light, measuring light to determine frequency of this chemical or whatever in a food, but your thoughts have frequency, they have quality to them. And so just shifting that actually does shift the microbiome in the gut, which I think is fascinating.
So he's exposing some people to watching news about the war, and some people, playing with their children in the field. What is he doing to shift the? I mean, how does the experiment work? What's the different thoughts that people are getting?
So he'll have people that are at the retreat but not necessarily participate. I believe this is the case, and if I'm wrong, I'll clarify when I can. But I believe the case is that he'll take the cohort of the people that are meditating, so meditators and non-meditators. So oftentimes that's the isolation. They're all at the same place at the same time, but some are meditating and some are participating in the program and some are not, all eating the same food. So in all definitions, everything else is the same, right? Just like and then he's measuring the changes in the microbiome and what those changes are, right? And what, just I guess what pieces of information that we have about the microbiome of this set of microbes leads to this level of health, yada yada.
Right.
That kind of thing. So he's just touching the surface on it. He started doing that with when COVID hit the scene. That was his first one, just showing a protein. I guess it wasn't really the microbiome, but it's more like a protein that you produce in the body. Serpin A5. That allowed the virus to either enter or not enter the cell. And you produce it in high quantities when you're meditating. You don't even have to be an advanced meditator. You just are
Yeah.
there doing the action.
Just try.
And then you produce this protein that then blocks it. So that's fascinating to interweave what can be done with the mind and thought patterns in creating the outcome we want to see on the planet. You know what I mean? And then interweaving that in with everything that we do, including our farming, you know, and our intentions and interactions with each other.
Yeah, well, certainly, our minds are extremely powerful, and what we do with them to a large degree determines our state of being. I think absolutely, but and it goes the other way also. If the more well you eat, the better your microbiome is.
That's right.
The better your brain chemistry is, and your hormone balancing is, and all that kind of stuff. So, if we're talking about getting out of that fight or flight thing and being sort of habitually in these patterns, not everybody necessarily is going to go and meditate for a week. But no, I mean, it's all there. It's all, I mean, there's, like you said at the very beginning, there's all 1,000 paths to the top of the mountain, different ways of engaging the question work. It's just a question of whether you're engaging the question or not.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It seems to me like as life proceeds, as we were saying also earlier, the things that cause struggle, if they don't kill you, will help you grow. And so, it really does seem to me like we're at a evolutionary point. It feels like, I mean, a lot of people say that, oh, the world's changing right now. It's going in 5 years, it's going to be different. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, things are getting pretty intense. I think we actually are in a moment of some kind of shift right now.
Close, actually.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, we're gonna burst out any moment here. But one thing I've noticed is, what's really interesting about our consulting work is we're giving basically the same advice. We're giving basically the same instruction. We're aiming towards. Whoops, sorry, I'm trying to talk and hit all the buttons. Sorry about that. Making 3 hours of sleep is not enough to be a program director. But what I'm seeing in our consulting work is we're basically aiming towards the same targets of soil chemistry with the same principles. We're aiming towards basically the same targets with soil biology with the same principles, disseminating basically the same message to all farmers we work with, whether it's a construction project or a commercial cannabis project. And what's interesting is as people start to get more and more and more and more specific on certain aspects, from my viewpoint, the results start to get pretty similar. Like certain farmers get really hung up on very specifics. And then from our standpoint, it's hard to notice the granular of that, of how that's actually affecting the agricultural process. And what I will say that's very interesting is we've had a couple projects where it was obvious that the emotions and thoughts of the people on that farm were actually driving and dictating plant growth. There's one farm in particular that we worked with in the Santa Barbara area, and the manager of that farm had a rule that you could not be on that farm and also be in a bad attitude. You could not be on that farm and also be confrontational with your employees. And what he would do is, if you were just having a bad day or squabbling with your coworkers, you would be sent home with pay, because he didn't want to penalize you, but he also did not want you around the plants. And when we started that consulting project, we did a bunch of data and looked at what they were doing. Plant health was well far and above what the soil chemistry would dictate, I guess you could say. And so this farm was built in many stages, and there was basically 5 evolutions of potting soil within this one acre canopy. And it's like, all the plants look pretty much the same, and you're like, man, you got some $75 municipal junky soil over here. We got some high dollar $300 potting soil over here. They're barely fertilizing, very minimal IPM effort, but everybody is in a great mood when they're at the farm, or else you go home. What was really interesting to us about that project is it kind of had like a self-correcting aspect to it, where it's like, yes, you could go home and get paid, but ultimately people didn't want that. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't want to be sent home because they were in a bad mood. And predominantly, they had great attitudes at that farm. There was a shuffling of employees. They had great attitudes at that farm. There was a shuffling of employees, and the main manager actually passed away in a car accident, and he got replaced by somebody that was the complete opposite. No matter what we did from that point, from a consulting standpoint, putting all hands on deck, that farm did not repair. It not only did not repair, it got so bad that even me personally being there as a 9 to 5 for several months could not pull it back together. And I was like, wow, how do you even quantify that? You know what I mean? Like, how do you even put that into a data set to communicate to people? But we went from not being at the farm physically, just doing math and analytics, changed employees, to someone that was actually quite destructive. And even me executing day to day could not bring these plants back in certain situations. And my God, that was, again, a guy from
I
Southern
know that
California.
just shows you the relative importance of all these things.
Uh-huh.
It just
Right.
shows you what the relative importance is.
Mm-hmm.
And I always talk about consciousness as the X factor. And air, water, minerals are all nice, but if you are in deep heart connection with your plants, they'll do things they shouldn't do day
Right.
in, day out. 100%. Praying over your seeds, offering gratitude, these kinds of things, but your general state of being, right? I mean, you are the thing that they're growing for, through, around, and yeah, I mean, it's our vibe. It's our vibe. It's our vibe. I don't know how much people. I don't. It took me a long time to realize that my state of mind affected other people around me. I think I was like almost 20 years old, and I'm like, wait a minute. If I'm in a bad mood, then other people around me are going to be pissy and like not friendly. Like, that's amazing. It's like it was a big revelation.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have that formal of a rule on my farm, but it's definitely something along those lines. If you got a bad attitude, yeah, get out of here. I don't give people. I don't have enough staff to have paid time off, or whatever. But it's definitely, let's go work with, chop some wood, or build a shed, or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Do things that don't involve living things, if you got to be out of bad attitude.
Yeah.
Or do some.
The chicken house has to get cleaned out sometime. I guess today's the day.
That is very apropos. That's exactly
Not
got
the
the
shit.
shit.
Yeah.
You want to have a shitty day? Here you go. Here's your shitty day. I want you to think about it for a while, and maybe you'll have a better attitude by the time you get out of there. You won't be breathing all the ammonia, and you'll be grateful for a breath of fresh air.
Old fashioned parent there.
Yeah.
So, let me see. There was something else I picked up on, but now I just laughed it out of my brain. But what you said, Dan, is like, yes, mineral chemistry is important. All these other aspects are important, but clearly farmer emotions can circumvent these things,
Yeah.
and we do see
It's not
that.
just farming; it's life in general. It's
Yes.
every bit of our life. It's our family. It's our community. It's our. Do you sleep at night? I mean, it's all this. It's everything. It's your whole life. I mean, farming is our formal lens here, but it's life is the real lens. Sorry to interrupt.
No,
No,
you're
you're good. Yeah, we're all about inspired comments for sure. But then, having said that, sometimes we see farmers they want to do everything with spirituality and energetics, and sometimes that doesn't seem to overcome really dysfunctional mineral chemistry. And so what we try to incorporate is a balance of the things that science has provided us, and a balance of those things that science hasn't figured out how to measure. And what's interesting in our work is we'll see so many group dynamics, again, on top of basically the same advice, targets, goals, strategies. And so you really start to see on a really granular scale how the dynamics between farm owners and farm operators and all that starts to get there. It's as a consultant, it's hard to like talk specifically about projects, but also be mindful to not. It's a really difficult balance, and like we have to wear these different hats. Like I'm still kind of wearing my hat of consultant yesterday, and managing privacy and not speaking specifically about projects, and and then we switch to live broadcast into this like education mode. A little bit hard to like, my brain's still on like, okay,
As long as you don't use people's names or give any specifics,
yeah,
I think the
yeah,
concepts are appropriate. No,
yeah,
I mean, so I would say, yeah, if if you're pretty sure that minerals help and are a good idea, then it's not a bad idea to do it. If you're pretty sure inoculants work and they help, and that's don't cost very much, like why not do it?
right,
But I think there's a bit of sometimes spiritual superiority, or there's like I'm going to go and sit and meditate, and that's going to heal everything. And
right,
I
Yeah.
don't know. I spent enough time up in the Himalayas to know that there's like a technical definition for meditation,
right,
and that's like internalized consciousness. Like you can't feel any of your five physical senses are shut down. Like just saying you're meditating, you're saying you're spiritual is a whole different thing than actually holding the vibe. And I
right.
think there's a big. I mean, it's great to have that understanding and awareness, but it can also be a religious kind of
Try.
um, a front or yeah, trap as well. Yeah, no, I think until I can, and I think to say until I can walk on water, and not the frozen kind, but the
Yeah.
liquid kind. I'm gonna keep following these rules around the physical plane because I mean, assume I'm
Yeah.
not that evolved, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I can hope that my vibe is beneficial, but I'm going to be spreading sea salt from stone wall to stone wall,
Well,
and
Right.
I yeah.
keeping it
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
foundation principles, and you know, a lot of farms you try, when we talk about the team dynamics, a lot of times we'll recommend like, hey man, maybe just burn a little sage. And it's fascinating how many farmers are almost offended that a professional consultant suggests like, hey, maybe the vibes are off, you know what I mean? And they want to look for soil chemistry, they want to look at biology, they want to look very specifically at some of these things. And it's like, sometimes you just got to burn a little sage, yo. But one of the things that you mentioned early on that I want to kind of circle back to is, as you're expanding your belief system and incorporating new modalities into your farming process, please try it on a small, measurable, controllable plot. We've talked in past episodes, like, through your early journey in the mineral chemistry world, saw people jump to biology only, which led to them going out of business, probably because they spread it to the entire farm before building foundational principles. And we see that a lot as well. And people will get excited about a new technique, a new trend, and immediately apply it to the entire farm before fully understanding how that component fits in with everything that else you're doing. And so not losing sight of this one part is a part of a whole ecological system that has to then work together. And as you start to incorporate new components to that system, that ecosystem is going to behave differently. So even if it's a very beneficial aspect, if it's not incorporated into what you're already doing in a way that's within context, oftentimes even the best things can then cause problems. And we actually see that quite a bit. It seems that a lot of farms struggle to, I guess you could say, set up a disciplined scientific study, where we're analyzing one variable. We see this happen a lot where people will think they're measuring one variable, but they're actually combining several. You start to lose track of what is actually bringing about the change, what is actually causing what. And then we start to get into confirmation bias of what was the actual root cause for that either
Yeah.
beneficial or detrimental. And that's when we kind of zoom way back off the spiritual stuff into the kind of technicalities of science, so to speak. But it's which is a lot of what we do in our consulting is we guide farmers through that. It's like, okay, we want to now incorporate mineral chemistry. Okay, we're going to do that within these parameters so that we can manage it. We're not going to get too far out of whack. Hopefully taking small bites at a time, because again, we want to be regenerative. We want to be sustainable. And if you put yourself out of business, you're not even sustainable. So first and foremost, we need all of these farmers that want to make a change, that want to make nutrient density, that want to respect the earth. Like, we need to keep you guys in business, and radically
Well, and I
jump.
think to the point of changing your mind,
Mhm.
there is a desire in some people to find a guru, a
Right.
leader, chief, priest, or whatever, and follow their and be a follower. And I think, it's not that there aren't inspired people out there, but if you've got a well-oiled machine to sell products, and look, we can take care of your whole farm here, and like, I don't know. I think like you're struggling to pay the bills, and you found the savior, and you've got the product line, and you're going to do it to the whole farm, and 3 years later you're still struggling and having a hard time making ends meet. Like, is it possible to wait 1 year and just that first year after you found the savior to like just do a plot with this, or half of the field or something, and see if you see any market differences? Because I know I've been through that cycle. I know a lot of people who were in that cycle of. I mean, how do you ever know it's a constant process of learning and evolution. But to your point, it would be more helpful, I think, if people would just do part of the farm with the new thing as opposed to the whole farm, and see, like, do you see significant difference? Because if you're, getting this advice and paying this money, you know, if you're getting a result, it should be noticeable. And if you're not getting a result, then it's not working. And they, maybe a nice person, maybe a great story, but there's something else that's a limiting factor. Yeah.
There was something that Dr. Arden Anderson talked about in one of his conferences that I thought would be important to say here, is that he had a graph, and he's got his levels of health, where you've got autonomous health up here, and then you got pre-disease, and then disease and death, right? And different products that he puts in different locations. And so sometimes when you're down in disease, a product might lift you up into pre-disease, and then you might think, oh, that worked, and then keep slamming hammering that, using that hammer, and thinking that should work, and then it works so long, and then it doesn't work anymore. And so I think it's important to understand the context of the whole and where you are on that spectrum of autonomous health versus disease.
That's not a bad point.
Lift you up, and what can, it's a dynamic system, and everything's moving, and you need to move with it. But that's a complex concept to understand, or to weave into this a little
bit. I think it would be really helpful for those of us who think we know what we're doing, if we really just grew some amazing plants. If we didn't just talk about 30-foot tall tomato plants, but grew them. If we didn't talk about 5-foot, 8-foot tall eggplants, but grew them. If we would start doing it and show people. You were saying earlier, people like to see. Some people like to see. I've got a lot of plants I should have taken pictures of. And I think just being able to humbly say, "Look here, see this, and let's have a conversation. Like, can you process this and understand this pre-disease state is better than disease state, but there's actually a whole bunch more."
Yeah.
The potential is really large.
Yeah. But you make a good point, though. Now's the time to do. Now's the time for action. Yeah. And putting it into action. Important. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of go on to that, the thing that really opened my eyes when I, after the workshop where we first met you and I started going down the Carrie Reams rabbit hole, and, at that time I was literally treating an alfalfa field, and he talks about having this 12-foot tall alfalfa or something, and it's
with solid stems, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And
not hollow stems. Yeah.
Exactly. And how much we're missing the mark right now, and it's not necessarily measurements of improvement. It's how much are we limiting the genetic potential of our crops. And once I looked at the process differently, that changed my entire viewpoint of the entire agricultural process, because from the farmer's standpoint, in your current era, in your current time, in your current reality, you're seeing a certain level of plant growth, and then a change might bring about a certain improvement. And what's interesting is a lot of farms go, "Ooh, that's the new peak." And what it did was change my viewpoint into, okay, now we're limiting genetic potential less and got an improvement.
We went from 20 out of 100 to 30 out of 100, and 30 is not 100.
Exactly.
But it is 50% more than 20. So
that's good math. Yeah. And I think what I observe is most of the people that we work with, that limits their desire to see what is actually capable, and if we work with a farmer that's had a certain measure of success for a certain time period, we get them 10, 20, 30, 40% more. They're like, that's it. You know what I mean?
Did
Like,
it.
we've done,
I've arrived.
done
I'm all
it.
set. Well,
Done
you
it.
want to keep working with the hungry ones. Stop working with them and work with the ones that say, I want more. I think the more people see, it's not like everything's going to be transformed tomorrow. It's a constant process. We got to keep walking the talk and leading the charge. And the more people are doing a good job and they're sharing and showing, the more other people can see it and be exposed to it. And maybe that little bit of that competitive, drive is can be stimulated. If you got any energy left in you, yeah. So,
Yep.
no, I think the economics also are a really big driver, which we've talked about in the past. But if people are starting to make good money, and like, wait, how did you do that? It's not about the person who's doing better; it's about inspiring the other people also. But
Right.
Right.
yeah, no, I just had a really interesting conversation with a guy who's a um, agronomist. It's out in Utah, and he is been working with animals to a large degree. But fermenting the food, basically, even with cows, like taking the hay and fermenting it, and with pigs and chickens and things, taking the grain, sprouting it, and then fermenting it, and
Mm-hmm.
like seeing dramatically increased weight gain. Like omega-6 omega-3 ratios at 1 to 1 instead of 15 to 1 or 30 to 1. Like, faster from birth to slaughter. Better nutritional metrics, lower cost of production, and like, if we really start to put together recipes that are actually out of the box, that really do like actually dial in the biological potential, I think everybody else is going to be, there's going to be no other option but to transition, because I mean, like, there has been a phase shift. So
Right.
it goes both ways. It goes, for those of us who really get it, like, to be able to support. I'm just thinking about this, like, just over the last couple of days, like the implications of being able to shift the way animal agriculture is done for the better, because it simply is better economics for even the big companies. That could be massive. And the implications on animal health and welfare, but human health, you know, and ecological system function as well. Yeah, no, I think rather than worry too much about changing other people's minds, I like to try to figure out how to do as much as I can, as well as I can, and not bother myself with other people to some extent. What is it about glass houses?
Yeah.
Something about glass houses.
Rocks and
Something about yeah, exactly.
windows.
It's a whole evangelist thing, right? It's like, am I worried about trying to inspire people to change their mind as though I have the answer, or am I just going to keep trying to do the best thing I can? And if I am doing something significant, the effect of that is people's minds will change, and so
Yeah.
I don't even need to think about other people per se. But anyway, there's another
Oh, that's what we brought
comment.
you. Yeah, no, and we kind of see a weird phenomenon with that in our work, is that when we get these wild successes, they keep them very private. And so the really unexpected result of my consulting journey is that I never would have guessed that we would get these industry leading results and then nobody would know about them, and
Yeah.
we've kind of had an internal battle. Is like, wait a minute, like I didn't come here to make a few people very successful. I came to make rapid change to the agricultural process. And so after certain years of doing what we were doing, we had to start changing our approach to have a wider effect. And we found that we were getting wild success within a small handful of farms that wasn't really changing the market all that rapidly. And it wasn't interesting enough until we changed to master classes and focusing on, for lack of a better description, the home gardener that
Hmm.
does talk about it. We made more change to the market in the last 2 years than we made in the 7 years prior. You know
Or
what I
just,
mean?
yeah, and
Which
just
is,
generally people that are
yeah,
passionate about doing the work and
yeah,
seeing it for themselves and doing something different. So that was
mhm,
cool to see that shift.
yeah,
It's cool to see our students and just
mhm,
anybody really embrace it and then see the results for themselves. We've had some students that have had, I mean, we all have our challenges, and some of them have PM or
mhm,
other issues that they have to put into place what they learn in the class, and then like literally, and to their credit, be very vulnerable on our forums and share, pictures
Mm-hmm.
and things like that of what's going down. And we've had even one really share mentally what's happening with him. It was a beautiful, beautiful journey to witness. And what was even more beautiful was the community that would gather around him
Mm-hmm.
for showing that, and then seeing him move out of powdery mildew on his own, putting all the things together, and then he did it. He did the work, and it all solidified and gelled into this, this process that, yeah, supports life. And anyway, it was cool. The community aspect of what we're all doing together is very important. I know, I follow Zach Bush, and I know you know who he is because I saw him at your convention in 20. But he talks about community and how important community is, and microbes exist in community. Everything's in community, right?
Well, I think that's also another key point to tease out of this. If we're sort of keeping score about what the central insights are about how to help empower evolution, is we are tribal by nature. So the more you can set up that support network of community to facilitate understanding and sharing, and if you got one person over in the corner saying something and everybody else is ignoring, is like, who is that person over there? Once you have five people all saying the same thing, then everybody else starts repeating it, even though they don't understand what it means. They start repeating it because that's what everybody else is saying, and so if you are strategic about how to do that, you could facilitate empowerment significantly. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
out and
What do
they
they call
teach.
it? Quorum sensing in the microbes. They call it in the gut flora, the soil microbes. They call it quorum sensing.
Mhm.
Once you have a critical mass of enough people saying the right thing, everything, all of a sudden everything else sort of dials in really nicely. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that.
I don't know. I feel pretty excited about. I mean, maybe I obviously live in a bubble, but it sure does seem like these concepts are much more well disseminated now than they were 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. I
I would
mean,
agree.
it
Yeah.
seems like it's really coming along nicely. So while we can be concerned about the impending whatever
Yeah.
collapse or transition or intensities, we can also be heartened by the fact that it seems like there's a concomitant increase in this understanding about how nature works and how to work with nature, and how we all do have everything we need to turn things around on a dime if we want to. Um, so,
I hear all kinds
yeah.
of people mentioning mycelium in connection in community all the time. Like there's
Yeah.
a energetics lady that we follow. Her name is Eileen McCusick. She does biofield tuning, and she was just sometimes she'll do like Sunday tunings on her YouTube. It's really cool if you ever want to watch it. But anyway, she talks about that mycelial network and communication all the time. It's like it's coming from a biofield tuning woman. So
Hmm.
that can sound ethereal and weird, but there is a field, a magnetic field that everything, living creates, and you are a living
Yeah.
creating a magnetic field, and then we use that to our advantage in science with CT scans and MRIs and all that stuff. Yeah, and so she's done some really cool work as well with fields and using analog tuning forks to clear fields.
Those are pretty cool, those little things. That's one of those things you gave me, I think, when I was at your
Yeah,
house.
yeah.
Yeah.
Have it
I love that little thing, little
right.
tuning fork.
Yeah,
Yeah. But I think the broader point about community is about the act of being together with people,
yes,
ideally in person, over a meal, you know, going for a walk in the backyard, like there's something really, really valuable about that I don't know how many people have re-established the patterns maybe they had before COVID, or are still struggling with a lack of that. But I think um, I feel like that would help a lot with a lot of the things that people are struggling with. Is you know community meal every Sunday, every other Sunday. One friend is going to host dinner at their house, and it's a potluck. You're hosting, you make the main course, but you're on salad this week, you're on vegetables this week, whatever. And maybe a bottle of wine if you want.
yeah.
But just having communion with
Right.
others and being able to share and connect, I think is, yeah, as far as the evolution of people's understanding, but also as far as our own foundational feelings of yeah,
Connection.
just happiness and groundedness and
Yeah,
joy.
creating that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, we
yeah,
got to do
man.
that.
So where do we go from
Where do we go from
where
here?
do we
What would
go
you?
from here, man? I think I would agree that there's definitely an exponential. You've obviously been in this lane for a lot longer than we have, but we've been paying very close attentions for about 10 years now. And there seems to be in the last couple of years a radical shift. The kind of joke I say is that the average American noticed something was maybe wrong with the environment in 2019, and that the weather was a little bit different, and when food supply became scarce and we went through the toilet paper crisis, people were somehow inspired by a lack of toilet paper to start a
The
garden.
great toilet paper crisis. Finally, Americans had the scales pulled off their eyes. Oh my God! Now I understand. I don't have any toilet paper. Now I can see what everyone was talking about all those years.
Somehow, somehow toilet paper crisis tuned people into the climate crisis,
It was a total thing.
and they
It
were
was a total thing.
totally, dude. They really were. And what
Sorry, you were going somewhere. I hope I didn't
oh, you're
distract
good, dude.
you.
Where it goes, I'm up like we're all on about 4 hours of sleep. So if it gets loony, it just is
Oh,
what it is. But one of the things that really blew my mind is, I grew up in an agricultural family. My uncle was a produce broker that managed very large farms. He supplied the onions and potatoes for In-N-Out for like 25 years. So if you've ever eaten a hamburger from In-N-Out in the last 25 years, we had something to do with
we
that.
don't have them on the East Coast, but there's a bunch of them out there out west. Yeah,
Yeah, they do that. They do that on purpose. It is a small family owned business, and the kids don't want to expand so radically, so that as soon as you cross that border into California, Utah, Nevada, you buy an In-N-Out burger, and you
yeah,
definitely get that phenomenon. But I came from a place of seeing food on this like massive scale. So food was hundreds of acres, thousands of acres, and whatnot. And my aunt and uncle always had a small garden, but I didn't look at this small garden as being big enough to actually supply my nutritional needs. So I was completely disconnected with how much produce it actually takes to feed a human body. I just saw truckloads of melons and onions and
yeah,
potatoes.
yeah.
I thought like in order to feed myself, I needed acreage. And once I started getting into, hearing about like victory gardens and, hearing that during World War II, 42% of the nutritional needs of Americans came from small home backyard gardens. And
Yeah.
I was like, that was the first time my mind crossed paths with the concept that I could feed myself out of my backyard, you know?
Mhm.
And then around that same time, I met a guy that was from Panama, actually, and he lived in just your average Southern California postage stamp yard, and he had two small boys, and he just said your average backyard, and he was farming organically back there, and didn't even really have that much stuff, and with just some basic staples like rice and beans from the store, he supplied most of his nutritional needs for him and his two small boys out of a small suburban backyard, and
Yeah.
that changed my entire reality. And then we met Courtney. So
Oh
Courtney,
yeah,
which we
she's
should
fun.
have Courtney on the show.
Yeah.
Courtney is a lady that sent me a message on Instagram in like, I don't know, 2013 or 14 or something. And she says, I want to get into gardening. Can you come help me out? And she was not very far from where I was. And so I met her, and she had like, they're in like the repurposing mode. So they were taking like an old dresser and turning it into a veggie garden on the side of the shady house. And I was confronted with like the reality of how disconnected the suburbanite is from production of crops. It's like I'm pretty sure it needs to be in the sun. And long story short, I was like, I don't think these are going to grow very well in this repurposed dresser. Can we just dig up some of this grass and like put it in the middle of the sun? And it seemed like a really revolutionary idea. And I've never seen somebody run with an idea so hard. And she started out removing the grass in her backyard, ultimately removed the grass in her front yard. She took the Masanobu approach and just stacked up wood chips for the first year or two. And she came from corporate America, so she kept extreme data and analytics. When she quit her job and became uh, a subsistence farmer in Santa Ana, I guess. And, I mean, she well produced her income in food out of her suburban backyard. And I mean,
Yeah, she said
Ron
like
Ron Finley ain't got
24,000.
shit on Courtney. We'll just say that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, Ron Finley's cool, but man,
Well,
Courtney's gone to a whole nother level of productivity and bees and bananas and chickens. And oh man, we just got a thumbs down from somebody about saying Ron Finley ain't nothing. Dang, wow.
we don't mean that.
That's
We
that's
got
the
mad
first.
love for you,
Sorry, Ron
Ron.
Finley.
I was just saying how good she was, not that he's bad. I think is the point.
Man, that was the first thumbs down we've ever gotten. Sorry about that. But anyway, pretty cool. And seeing this woman go from corporate America completely detached from the farming process and what it takes. Not saying I was all that great at that time either, but just starting with peeling back the grass, starting to improve the soil, getting some wood chips on there, getting some food grown, and what has come from that is just unbelievable.
Thousands of pounds
I
of
mean,
food.
literally thousands of
Thousands
pounds of food, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of eggs, pounds and pounds and pounds of honey. And just by starting that process, seeing the transformation is just unbelievable. We've done some really cool stuff in our consulting career, but Courtney's backyard's one of the most fun, honestly. And
She is in California. Try to talk about
Yeah.
that here in Utah, and they're like, "Yeah, but that's California." It's like, well, you can still grow a lot of food during the seasons you can grow food.
Right.
You know what I mean? But yeah,
I was just saying that again this morning about the potential if, each of us humans had, access to a couple acres and the knowledge about how to work with it, it would be, we could return the climate, imbalances around on a dime. We could deal with the debt crisis and the housing crisis and the disease crisis. And, I think for those who are excited by it, it's so amazing how much you can do with life with not much space, with all the things we've got these days. I mean, it is just so totally powerfully exciting. And I think there's some like TV shows out there about that, like following the Alaskan homesteaders or whatever. But I don't know. I just feel like it's that kind of the thing that it's not in the mass consciousness very much. Maybe you just need more people doing it. Maybe we need another, serious crisis. So where the government is saying, do victory gardens because, I mean, and that maybe what it comes to, but there's a lot of people with yards that could do a lot. But I think systemically, it's just one of my pet peeves is the way in which people are inhibited from having access to land. It's just extremely difficult for a lot of people to have access to land tenure. Different parts of the country, different parts of the world, different issues, different logistics, but yeah. No, and it is also so amazing what you can accomplish, and it can't really be described. It has to be experienced. It has to be experienced. Yeah.
interesting to see that in the terms of suburbia, because I mean, we're in an HOA, although it's a looser kind of HOA, so not quite so strict.
Rigid.
But like we're putting out straw around our strawberries, and they're like, "What are you doing?" And like it's not like beautiful, but it's it works and it's what it needs. And
Who says it's not beautiful? Yeah.
exactly them,
I
it's
agree.
not the cookie cutter, approved lawn and
Painted wood
approved
chips. I
beds,
don't
like,
need
well,
painted wood chips
I
in
don't
my garden.
I don't need your
Like,
approval,
Yeah.
so
At least our neighbors have been good sports.
They
we
have
we have a
been.
chicken coop.
Everybody's
We're
watching us.
allowed to have. Yeah, they're like, what are these weirdos doing?
You got decent space at your place. You got decent sized backyard. It's not like it's a total cookie cutter.
right.
No,
Postage
but
stamp. Yeah.
it is weird though because we've been together 10 years now. This is the first time we've lived in the suburbs. We've lived more rural this entire
Yeah.
time and been able to spread straw wherever we want and no one there to talk. And it's just kind of funny now being in the
Everybody watching
suburbs
you.
in a home that doesn't have a bunch of fences and gates. That's kind of more open, which is way different to my California experience. And we put a little straw in the backyard and all the neighbors are like, what are you doing over there?
Also blows down.
And I bet if you brought them over a pint of strawberries from the garden in May or whenever you're picking them, June,
Yeah.
That would be all it would take to.
We share. We definitely
Well,
share our eggs and our
yeah.
honey, and
Yeah.
The
yeah,
tough
love
is
it.
we're backed up against the mountain, and we legitimately get 70-mile-an-hour winds. And so poor Sarah, every time we try to set up a garden in our backyard, it blows down the street. And so we've kind of veggie garden at our house,
Yeah.
but we do share honey from the bees, and we do share eggs from the chickens, and they do seem to appreciate that.
I'm
Um,
switching to low growing things.
I'm just kidding.
Yes.
Strawberry. We're gonna like
Well,
double down.
you can put up some fencing, 4 foot, wood fence every now and then as
Yeah.
a windbreak.
I'm gonna do like cattle panels. Like I think I'm gonna try and do like a really heavy duty trellis system basically. So as long as it's hooked to that, maybe it'll hang on. But good Lord, our garden gets yard saled every time the wind turns up to 50 miles an hour. So it's been difficult, but
We now have really good wind informed seeds,
we
though. So
do.
like,
We do have
yes.
wind formed corn seeds this year. But as far as like taking that first step, I guess we could say, so we've talked a lot of broad topics. Let's circle back around to like, okay, if you made it this far through the show, what do we do to make that first step, right? And so to me, it sounds like what's on the minds of all of us is, for the love of God, we need suburbanites and everybody to start growing something would be what my main desire.
That's a call to action. Yeah.
It sure seems like we're on the verge of World War III, and we got like 3% nutritional needs handled by home gardens. We got to bump that number up if it's for species survival, regardless of what happens with the world. It's just something we need to do. And I don't know that we're going to get the largest farms on the planet interested enough in short enough time period to produce nutrient-dense food. I think we need to start doing it ourselves. What we've seen in some of our commercial work is when the home gardener produces quality that the commercial farms cannot produce, that does change the market, and it somehow affects demand to where if we can have a small scale home or backyard gardener produce quality of produce and other products that are of higher quality than can buy in the store, that does start to change the market in a way. And so for me, it's really important that we start, just start really,
Yeah. It's a yes and all hands on deck.
Mhm. Yeah.
If you have ears to hear, all hands on deck.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, I think I maybe used to take more of a small farm
Mhm.
biased approach. I don't feel like I have that perspective so much these days.
Mhm.
I think getting in touch with nature is critically important for your sanity.
Mhm.
I do think that large scale operations can do, and some of them are doing quite a very good job
Yes.
producing food. So it's not just that it has to be done locally, and in many cases, a well um, organized, highly functional, large scale farmer is going to do a better job than most backyard people will do. Um,
True.
so, um, yeah, I don't know. I think it's. Is there going to be a pruning? I mean, is there? If you look at the levels of humans that are dying right now, like is over pre 2020, like the people are dying. More people are dying now than used to. I think it feels like there is literally a die off happening,
Yeah.
um, and so that is, and some people are maybe like just resigned to it, but maybe some people are like, no, actually, I don't want to die, or I really want my child not to die, and I think unfortunately it is coming to that point, but that is the point where we're at least some of us are gonna say, this is not okay. I really, it's life or death. It's literally life or death, and yeah, but it's sad to have gotten to this point
Mhm.
as a species, where this has happened in such a large degree. But um, we were talking about our evolutionary process as our collective evolutionary process earlier. So yeah, it's intriguing. I mean, I go through various states of inspiration and sort of depression of like, what's it all worth? What do we, am I trying to save people? Am I on some head trip trying to like go out there and do this work, or should I just, I got my sweet little homestead pad, just chill out and watch everything come down around me.
Right.
Uh, but Yeah, boy, I don't know. I'm certainly feeling it. I'm certainly feeling like there's a lot in the air, and
Mhm.
I don't know. But I personally feel very heartened. Certainly there's always death, but it feels like there's a I do feel this impulse of like, we can take this next level. This is we're in a process of going somewhere. It's
Right.
not
Right.
it's not just an implosion.
Right.
Um,
Agree.
so
Choice. It's always a choice every
And,
moment.
and we go through I don't want to speak for Sarah, but I go through that same thing what you just described. It's like, man, I go through pretty solid peaks and pretty solid valleys of being optimism and like terrified for the future. And a lot of our work is after things went wrong. So I guess disproportionately, we do a lot of farm repair, I guess you could say. So once crop loss has been had, we identify where that crop loss came from. We try to change direction. So I guess in a lot of ways, we're swimming in outcomes that didn't go so well, I guess you could say, as well as working with those that want to be as high performance as possible. And yeah, man, it's like the balance of that for us is very difficult. It's that it has felt like when I've done the most work going out there and evangelizing and trying to move them, sometimes I didn't feel like it made that much effect. And then when we've kind of just focused on our own garden, times we saw more effect. It's hard to know what is producing a better result, so we just try to do all of it at once, I guess. I'm not really sure, but I think it comes back to what you said at that first workshop we went to see you, is when you talk about just occupying the land, and that's not like a
Right.
weird colonizing ownership. That's
Yeah.
literally just be on the land and do this thing. And I think that's one of the main goals I have with this channel and these conversations is to encourage people to occupy whatever space you have for as regenerative of systems as you can. If that's microgreen trays in a condo, I mean, please do that. You know what I mean? You don't need to buy tractors and farm 40 acres. Just try to produce nutrient density in your own space. And that's kind of what we've done is it's been so hard to garden traditionally in our windy backyard that we set up a microgreen tray. It's like, okay, I can at least get some soil with some paramagnetic rock and some good mineral nutrition. I can grow seed sprouts in it, and I can once a day through the winter consume something with some life force. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And just starting where we're at. And for us, that's occupying the land right now. You know, we've got our chicken coop. Veggie garden's blowing down the street, so we're gonna shoot chickens,
the chickens
bees.
still get blown away too. Sounds like a heavy enough wind. Those chickens might get blown away. I
No,
guess they can make their way back.
I concrete. I
I'm
put
sure.
concrete. No, my chicken coop is wind rated to 125 miles an hour, and it holds up. So
The chickens, not the chicken coop.
yeah, yeah. No, I made it so they're good and they side when it's windy. But
You
you
got
know,
a channel about it.
yeah, I do. But um, just doing what you can where you're at is just what I'm trying to
Mhm.
get. And it's like, what would you suggest, Dan, if or Sarah, and any of you guys, like, how do we start today with occupying the land in a positive fashion that's regenerative, that's respectful, that is a give and take, that's giving back to the land in some way to start accelerating this change of tides, I guess you could say. I don't know if either one of you have anything to comment on that, but I feel like bringing it back to that might be kind of good.
Go for
Um,
it,
You want
Dan.
to go, Sarah?
No.
What's that?
You.
I'm sure I can find something to say, but yeah, feel
yeah,
free.
you're up, Sarah.
Oh, I mean, I think, everything that we have said as far as start somewhere, just start.
Mm,
And I think in the vein of what we're talking about today, just because it's been on my mind is um, when you're starting on the human plane of things, on the human garden, there's the what you feed yourself both in food and in thoughts. Be kind to yourself. You're
mm,
here on this planet for a reason, and there's lots of conditioning that has gone on, and maybe you're stuck, or I'm stuck, or we're all stuck in some sort of fear response. Recognizing that, being kind to yourself, just being open to letting that go and loving yourself. I know that maybe sounds like a very feminine thing to say, but I think it needs to be said that we're all on that journey and there's an evolution in that journey, and we can let go of that fear and you can still be safe and you can still be held, and you can still be loved and supported and protected. And we can learn a different way to engage in our environment, in that regards, in the mental block that happens with us. And I think that's the first garden, at least for me, that's my first garden, is here, because everything else is just secondary to that in my viewpoint. But having gone through what I went through in my healing journey, what supported that transition most profoundly was it started with food. It started with eliminating the toxicity. And it was like when I was able to eliminate the toxicity from the vessel, it was like the vessel could hear. I could hear what was happening, and it just like started correcting. I mean, I was doing all the things that I needed to on that physical plane, as far as moving the garden in the right direction, and in removing the toxicities and being very diligent, which takes a lot for humans to change their diet. It's the hardest thing to do,
Right.
because it's
It
such
actually takes a lot of work. Yeah.
it takes a lot of work, and you have to be like, for me, I was very scared I was going to die, like literally. So it was life or death for me. So that gave me the oomph to do it. But having gone through it, it was quite the profound shift in my garden, both in my health and in my mindset, that allowed the shift for everything else to happen. So for what it's worth, that was what was the most profound shift for me in the garden of me, that allowed the gardens outside of me to progress along with that garden, you know.
I
Nice.
think that's really. I think it's foundationally important to me.
Yeah.
Beating yourself up is not going to help anybody.
No.
Um, and and um, when your microbes are happy, you're in a better state of mind.
Yeah.
And so, building your body well, and you get a new you right you get a new body every 6 months, right? You're
That's right.
constantly building a new body out of what you eat. So
That's what they
so
say.
the more you know if you're falling apart, one good thing to do is to start building yourself back up with actual good food. Um, One thing I think we were just talking about for a moment there at the beginning before we started recording was the whole hallucinogenics,
Oh,
component. And I think that, as I understand it, there's a lot of people starting to do mushrooms and all kinds of stuff like that, ayahuasca these days. And was it Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind? Um, a lot of research is happening. It's legal, at least here in the States. Our understandings. This was actually what our indigenous forebears used on a regular basis to, keep them connected with their deeper selves. I think is a really important piece of the puzzle. I think there's a lot of. We're talking about the brain being sort of, we've got our little ruts. We're in our ruts of thought, and like, okay, I'm going to, be humble and say, yes, I'm in a rut. I can't get out of a rut. Like, what
mm-hmm.
is there something I can do? Can I take a pill to get out of a rut? Yes, it's called a mushroom. And maybe you need 2 or 3 of them, but there literally is, like, nature's got an off, like fill in that rut. We'll get gravel. We can fill it in. We got to make a new path. We um, do have ways of doing that are, um, you know,
Yeah.
time tested by humans, time tested by humans, and that's worth something, I think. Um, so, yeah, I mean, it's all kinds of really exciting research going on about PTSD and depression and addiction and all that kind of stuff being able to be systemically addressed through the use of hallucinogenics. And to your point, Sarah, about negative self thought and all that kind of stuff, like if you're in those kind of a ruts and you are,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, nature made some things that can help.
Yeah.
I've been,
Talking.
yeah. So, yeah.
Talked about that this last week. A lot of the states are moving forward pretty proactively with that, which is pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Military. I mean, there's some serious, yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. No, go.
no, you're good. Yeah. Yeah. That I've in my journey, interestingly enough, we cross paths with a lot of veterans in our work as employees of
Yeah.
the farms. They turn out to be fantastic employees on farms because if you need a sandbag wall built, it doesn't matter if those people on that farm are from different branches of the military. It doesn't matter if they've met each other that day. If you're like, we're building a sandbag wall, they just fall into line and build it. It's pretty cool to watch. And most people don't even know each other, and they're just fluidly moving, building a sandbag wall. And so we actually see a lot of veterans, and a lot of them have had pretty good success going that route and rewiring the brain circuits and all that. One of the things that I see in the farming community, doesn't matter really what crop it is, it seems, there's a lot of guilt, shame, and judgment in the collective consciousness of farming in general, especially in our cannabis work. There's a lot of it.
Just
a lot
around that plant.
Yeah, around the plant in general. And that Eileen McCusick that Sarah talked about has a session on guilt, shame, and judgment. And we've only had a handful of farms actually do this because usually it's way too far out for most people. But playing that tuning session for guilt, shame, and judgment to the plants and to the farmer brings about radical change. And I think in the agricultural world, there's a lot of guilt, shame, and judgment building up over the chemicals we're now reliant on. Like, farmers are not dumb. They know this is, I believe a lot of them know what they're producing is not the healthiest. A lot of them even say, well, we'll send it off to another community. I better not eat it. And that's been the thing that really inspired my journey, and what inspired me to push so hard on the agricultural front is, seeing it didn't really matter what crop it was. The strategy was to poison that crop and ship it far away from their family. Well, if all farmers are producing poisonous crops and shipping it away from their family, we're all just eating it anyways. You know what I mean? And
what is a way anymore?
Yeah, it's like, what is a way anymore?
It's all one big circle, guys.
And
I don't think farmers want to do that. I don't think they want to do that. I think that really, because I've been teaching these courses for a long time, and there's a certain subset of the populace that are like, get the big picture, get the vision, are inspired, want to go push the envelope. And then there's the people that are more like established in the conservative, not conservative per se, but like more conservatively minded. And they've got a big operation. They've been doing it for 20, 30 years. And they're like, I think what you're saying is true, Dan. I just need you to give me a recipe to do it.
Yeah.
I don't actually want to learn all the nuances. I just want to be told what to do. And so there's a creative tension there where I would say there is receptivity. There is a desire. I was just talking to a guy from Vermont a couple of days ago about, they got like 40 inches of rain this summer, about as much as we got here, except it's more mountainous there. And so people got washed out more. But there's a lot of farmers that really lost their shirts this year, and some who didn't because they had a more well-functioning biological system. But it's how do we balance that act between the supporting people in their learning and creativity, and the other people are just like, I'm full, I'm happy to cut and paste a program with a program. If you can side by side, show me over a year or two that it works.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it takes more of us, I guess.
Well, and something I noticed
building out.
Something I noticed in 2020 was I did start to notice the receptivity of farmers increase, because a lot of the food farmers in general were not super, just in my world, I didn't see a lot of them super receptive to some of these other techniques or moving away from the religion of UC Davis or what have you. And I would say, I don't know if it had anything to do with the pandemic, but just as a year in my journey around 2020, we started seeing the first farmers like, okay, what is this other way? The major roadblock that I see in most food farmers is a lot of times this is generational farms, and things have been in a pretty steady decline for a while now. And they don't want to be the one that lost the farm, basically. You can see that there's a legitimate and realistic fear to make some sort of shift and then lose the family farm ultimately. And so one of the hardest parts of our consulting work is first getting them to go on that journey with you, but then keep it in the parameters of safety so that we don't compromise the farm.
Yeah, which goes back to the try a corner and experiment.
Right.
If you've got something that works and they can experiment on one block or 2 blocks and see if it does.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, do we
Anyway,
have
it feels like we've covered the.
Yeah,
What's that?
covered it
so.
all? Yeah, I think we did it. So is
I'm gonna
there
go eat some out. No, I'm just
peace?
kidding.
Gonna go on a walkabout.
I should have turned the light on before I sat down. I knew it was going to get dark. I can see that.
Oh no, you
Yeah,
look
you're
good.
I mean,
Good.
I can only see myself pretty small, but it looks like it's pretty dark.
No, you look good. I'm keeping you polished up over here. I'm trying to make you look
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But
It doesn't look like we got
Cool.
any questions.
yeah, I think we just kind of
but lots of
confused
thumbs
people
up.
today. But
Yeah.
we'll jump. If you've got some questions, go ahead and put them in the comments of this video, and we'll circle back around. We'll get to them when this kind of settles into your brain.
Yeah.
We appreciate everybody for joining today, and Dan, we appreciate you taking the time to join us on this show to try and reach people and inspire them to really grow anything. Would be my advice. What do you think,
Much
Sarah?
love to you. Absolutely. Yeah.
So thanks, guys. See you next time. In 2 more weeks, I think we'll be
Yep.
doing this again.
Yep.
Talk to you later,
All
guys.
right. Sounds good. Bye.